Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We'll discuss the Endangered Species Act and NCBA's ongoing efforts to reform this troublesome law. Plus, we'll have a fall market outlook from the experts at CattleFax.
Now, from the Denver headquarters of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, it's NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. Enacted in 1973, the Endangered Species Act was intended to prevent the extinction of certain animals. However, the act has instead become a weapon for environmental groups, and one that damages the livelihoods of our nation's livestock producers. That's why the National Cattlemen's Beef Association and Public Lands Council have been working together, along with state wildlife agencies, conservation groups, and others across the political spectrum, to modernize the ESA. In addition to proposals that are circulating through Congress, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recently announced reforms that could improve the way the Endangered Species Act is implemented and provide much-needed relief to ranchers. Cattlemen and women tell us these changes are long overdue.
One of the big things with ESA is the fact that it has not been updated since its inception. Also, it just seems like once a species gets on that list, they never get off. We have, for instance, the alligator, and it was one of the early species on there. Entire Florida, Louisiana were inundated with alligators all over the place, and they never come off of that list. The other part of it, particularly for ranchers, farmers throughout the country, is working with us instead of against us. We certainly do not want to destroy or remove any of the habitat for these animals. But at the same time, we've got, in my area, development coming all around us, but yet we're the ones that bear the burden and bear the penalty for that.
I think the biggest misconception that the public has about the Endangered Species Act is that when something gets listed, it actually is improving the status of that species. But you look at how many species are listed and the amount that have actually been removed from the list, it's not a very good success story. And so you need to list a species that you can actually make a difference for and not list a species on emotion.
The problem with ESA so far is that only 3% of those species that have ever been listed have come off of that list. And so not only is the program lacking in a track record of success, but at the same time, we need to start fixing and modernizing that act sooner than later.
I feel like that the Endangered Species Act, it does need a little bit of modernization. We're really working hard to delist the grizzlies. They're another success story, and that we need some flexibility so that it works for producers out in the country and, all the stakeholders, to be honest. But when there is a success, we need to act on delisting it.
I think it's clear that ranchers are good stewards and they want to protect species. That's not the issues. We just need a modernization that actually works, looks at good science, delists species when they recover, pays attention to what's going on the land, and actually consults with the people who do this for a living, who are out there all the time.
Joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Ethan Lane, Executive Director of the Public Lands Council and Executive Director of Federal Lands for NCBA. Welcome, Ethan.
Glad to be with you.
Now, we just mentioned that some changes could be coming for the Endangered Species Act. Where do we stand on those efforts?
Well, there's a lot going on with the Endangered Species Act at the moment. We have people engaged on this issue both in the U.S. Senate and in the House of Representatives, as well as in the administration through a rulemaking process that's unfolding at the Department of Interior and is now undergoing a public comment period. So across the board, we're attacking this issue from every angle possible to make sure that while there's some attention on this issue, we're getting work done on behalf of producers that's going to make their lives a little easier in dealing with the Endangered Species Act on a day-to-day basis. A lot of those issues that we're tackling have to do with the state's role in that process. Over and over as we've worked on this issue, what we've seen is states are sort of pushed to the background in favor of deference to the federal implementation of the Endangered Species Act, when in reality, more than 70% of the conservation work done on these species is done by state fish and wildlife agencies. So the bill we've been working on, that we've talked to you about multiple times in the past, is the ESA Amendments Act of 2018. That is sponsored by Chairman John Barrasso from Wyoming in the U.S. Senate, and his committee, the Environment and Public Works Committee, has been working diligently on this issue and building stakeholder support coming out of the Western Governors Association process over the last few years. We're at the 1 yard line now of getting language together that is going to pull in some of these moderate environmental groups, some of the working lands focused groups that see some value in crafting a solution here that will make the act work better and kind of get it around to a point where it's being more responsive to the species on the ground that really need the help without getting down in all of this litigation that has really gummed up the process in the past. So despite being in sort of a hyper-partisan environment at the moment, ESA is really shaping up to be kind of a ray of bipartisanship, and that's in no small part due to the cattle industry and PLC's role in this process. We've really kind of served as a bridge between those two groups, trying to find some common ground to make this process work better. And we've needed to do that because we play such an important role in conserving species under the ESA. You can't do it without us. So it's important that you talk to our industry and get our input on how to make it work properly, and that's exactly what's happening.
I know Western ranchers have been grappling with this issue for a long time, but does it have the potential to impact all ranchers across the country?
Oh, without question. I mean, we stand here today, I'm talking to you from Washington, D.C., and if I drive just an hour or two south of here into Virginia, you're in the middle of an area that has one of the top 10 highest rates of listing in the country. This is an issue that already impacts producers coast to coast. We just feel it more acutely in the West because of that large federal footprint. When you have the BLM or the Forest Service or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service able to exert control over when you turn out or when you gather or anything you do on your allotments, you feel that pressure a lot more acutely. But more and more that's creeping into operations across the country. And we've seen that as we've gone through this process. We've seen producers from coast to coast kind of wake up and say, oh yeah, we have a lot of those issues in our backyard. We're glad you're working on it. How can we help? I think the committee's been amazed at the outpouring of support they've seen from places like Florida, North Carolina, Indiana, West Virginia, Virginia. I mean, it's amazing as we talk more and more about this, we see more and more people across the country in our industry raising their hand and talking about the need to make this act work better.
So Ethan, what can cattle producers do to get engaged in this issue?
Keep talking to your members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, and let them know how important this issue is to both your industry and to your operation at home. Tell your story. Talk about how those species impact your operation, good and bad. We want to make sure folks know about the good work we're doing and the fact that sometimes those laws that are supposed to be there to help those species are actually hampering our efforts to conserve them on the ground. We want to make sure that folks understand that our goal here is to get to a place where the Endangered Species Act is conserving species, but also conserving the ranches that are operating in those environments, because without those ranches there's not any manpower on the ground to really help these species or anything that we do for the conservation end of the spectrum, just as a matter of the way this industry operates their businesses. So telling that story, talking about your personal experiences is really critical and really a key to us getting across the finish line here.
The Public Lands Council has a big celebration coming up very soon. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
We do. Our 50th anniversary celebration is going to be in Park City, Utah on September 27th, 28th, and 29th. We're expecting a record-setting crowd. We're going to have speakers from all of the agencies. All the agency heads actually will be there in attendance to speak with our members and talk about these issues. We will be celebrating our outgoing president, Dave Ellison, and also really looking back at the last 50 years of Western ranching history. There'll be a lot of past presidents there, a lot of past execs, and it's going to really be a chance to kind of talk about everything that's happened over the last 50 years and how the industry's changed, and also probably some of those things that haven't changed much in the last 50 years. I mean, as a lot of our viewers know, the more things change, the more they stay the same, and that's certainly true on a lot of our issues. So it's going to be a real chance to look back on some of our big wins and the big fights that we've taken on and the victories we've had for the cattle and sheep industries over the past 50 years and what we'll do in the next 50.
Thanks so much, Ethan, for your information and insights.
Thanks for having me.
For more information on the issues that impact federal lands and the ranchers that graze there, be sure to visit the website publiclandscouncil.org. You can also get details on how to attend the 50th annual meeting coming up September 27th in Park City, Utah. And don't forget, you can help us in the fight against regulations that threaten cattle producers and their livelihoods by joining NCBA. It's easy to do. Just call 1-866-233-3872 or visit the website ncba.org. Still ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll check in with the experts from CattleFax on what we can expect from the cattle markets this fall. And later, we'll have a closer look at a New York operation that's winning awards for its conservation efforts. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The 2019 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show is set for the Big Easy, New Orleans, Louisiana. It's the cattle industry's biggest convention with education, networking, and fun. Plus, you can check out the huge NCBA Trade Show, outstanding entertainment, and much more. So let's go to New Orleans for the 2019 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show, January 30th through February 1st. Details at ncba.org.
Welcome back. The end of 2018 is quickly approaching. So what can we expect from the cattle markets for the rest of the year? Joining us now to talk about the fall outlook is Marcus Bricks with CattleFax. Marcus, have you and the team at CattleFax been at all surprised with how the cattle markets have performed this year?
Well, I wouldn't say surprise is the exact word. We typically like to define new market information in one of two ways, either as a risk or an uncertainty. If it's a risk, then that's something we can assign a probability to. If it's an uncertainty, then that's something where it's a little bit more unknown. It's harder to actually define. I would say that the trade war today is an uncertainty. Currently today, it looks like we're on the right process to renegotiate NAFTA with Mexico, which would be beneficial and hopefully remove new tariffs on up to 30% of our pork exports going into that country. But at the same time, we look towards China, and China today is dealing with an outbreak of the African swine fever. If you were to lump up all of the world's pork exporters, that total amount would only equal about 17% of the pork that China consumes on an annual basis. So it's a lot of unknowns there. And if you also think that the two major protein sources that China could source from the U.S. that they are taxing heavily today, pork and soybeans, it could be a major shakeup here within the next several months.
So how has consumer demand both at home and abroad impacted cattle prices this year?
Well, consumers have remained optimistic. We've seen historically low unemployment, rising new job openings, as well as slowly rising wage growth. Energy costs are on average a little bit higher this year, and rising interest rates going forward have some a little concerned about economic growth. But today, for beef demand, we still see an optimistic picture. So far this year, in the first half of the year, our retail beef prices were up roughly 6%, but we didn't see a corresponding loss in demand, so that's a good sign. Abroad, we're still seeing a pretty high amount of demand for beef in countries like Japan and South Korea. Currently, our export forecast is on pace to be 10% higher this year. We know still that beef demand might be large. We are seeing a very large percent of the retail dollars paid in the beef segment continue to be held onto by the retail segment. And in terms of cattle prices, that is one factor that we would like to see improve here next year.
Absolutely. I know packers have been making quite a lot of money recently. Tell us a little bit about what you project in terms of feeders and what they might expect for the rest of 2018.
Well, our fed cattle supplies are beginning to decline seasonally, and if you pair that with a seasonally larger demand, then you would say that our price trajectory should be a little bit stronger through the end of the year, which it's going to have to be. We have a large supply of cattle that need to get pulled through the system, and any issue with currentness could cause our market to be backed up a little bit. Currently today, as you mentioned, the packer is making a historically large level of profit. Their profit margins are very high, and so they have plenty of incentive to pull that supply through the industry.
Fantastic. And let's talk cow-calf side of the equation for a moment. Clearly, we're approaching weaning time for many folks across the country. For those who haven't sold their calves yet, what might they expect for the rest of the year?
Well, those that did sell calves, we saw a pretty high amount of activity on those summer video sales. Almost 720,000 calves, feeder cattle and calves were sold through that period in those 3 major sales. Those prices brought about $900 to $1,000 a head or more, which is profitable for the cow-calf producer. Predicting on kind of the seasonal pace, we are going to see that typical price break going into the late fall as we come into a larger supply of those calves. The peak supply is usually October. But if you would measure your typical seasonal price break from a spring high into a fall low for a 550 weight steer, you would price them around the mid 160s today. With negative margins in the cattle feeding and background segment, demand could be a question going forward, but currently today the demand has been fairly stout, and if that stays, then you could see that price maintain the higher end of the 160s for a less fall low.
For the rest of the year. Gotcha.
Yep.
Let's talk crops for just a minute. Heard a lot about what USDA says about the corn crop, and see pictures of other people showing corn crops, or at least ears that don't look as good.
Sure.
What's your read relative to the corn crop and the overall feed resources this fall?
Well, currently, USDA, their most recent WASDE forecast showed, I believe, 178.4 on a national forecasted yield. CattleFax's record, we plugged those forecasts into our 12-state corn yield model. Our estimates were somewhere between 178 and 180, so that's a number that we believe. Bottom line, with a yield that high in the production scale, we would see stocks to use value somewhere between 12 and 14%, and historically anything above 12%, you don't have a corn crop or a corn price rather with below $4 a bushel. And so going forward with there, knowing what we saw in terms of spring moisture and a lower level of hay stocks on farm, our expectation for hay prices this year are somewhere about $10 a ton higher than last year.
Gotcha. Marcus, we really appreciate all that insight. It's very helpful as you talk about we can manage some of the risk, hard to manage the uncertainties, but we've got a lot of both going on right now, don't we?
You bet.
Thanks for your time. For 50 years, CattleFax has been providing producers with the tools they need to make profitable decisions. If you're looking for top-notch beef industry research, information, and analysis, then visit the website CattleFax.com. Although feed represents the largest single production expense for cattle operations, producers know how important it is to provide their animals with the nutrition they need through every stage of development. Lane Nordland introduces us to a company that helps producers track down the highest quality ingredients for their rations.
The NCBA trade show is truly full of opportunities for cattlemen and women to meet suppliers of agricultural products to help making getting the job out on the ranch done easier. And feed options are also very important out on our operations. And joining us here today is Chris Van Olinda with Commodity Specialist Company. And you were able to talk with cattle producers about the forage products that you provide the industry. Let's talk a little bit more about the conversation you had with producers.
Well, a lot of the producers that come by have started doing their own mixing. Classically, a lot of producers have just bought feed at the feed mill, and that's fine. But as they get bigger in the byproduct feed situation, distiller's grain, for instance, it becomes more and more available. They want to do more and more on-farm mixing. And that's where our company comes in. We are in the business of providing bulk feed ingredients to farms and ranches across the United States.
Now, Chris, one thing about cattle, they can utilize almost anything, and one product, of course, is barley, and you have a great relationship with a lot of breweries out there.
That's true. One of the byproducts to the brewing industry in the United States is spent brewer's grain, and our company handles about 65% of all the spent brewer's grain in the country, and that comes from large breweries and smaller craft breweries. So we're kind of doing a sustainable thing there where it's making a full circle, and we're able to use that byproduct back into the cattle industry, whether it be beef or dairy.
And that word sustainability, I think that is one great thing out there, how we can use multiple aspects of agriculture to help continue on the next process of agriculture. What are some of those other products you reuse, we could say?
There is the byproduct of the ethanol industry, which is used very extensively in the beef cattle, dried and wet distillers grain. Soybeans are crushed to make soybean oil, and what's left over there is soybean meal and hulls. Cottonseed oil, same thing, cottonseed meal, cottonseed hulls. So there's numerous products that come out of the food chain that the cattle can actually utilize very well, and most generally a little less expensively too.
Now, throughout the year, what are some of the suggestions you have for producers that are feeding these different types of products? When is it more relevant, one product versus the other?
I'd like to explain to my customers that they probably need to take a look at doing some contracting, forward contracting for their wintertime feed needs. I'd start looking in July. Historically, people have liked to look into October, but you might be a little behind the curve at that point. So yeah, I would try to figure out what I was going to need for the winter time and start doing some pricing. And again, we do forward contracting, so that would be the time I'd look for my winter feed needs would be in the early fall.
Chris, if our viewers would like to get a hold of you for information on your commodities or that forward contracting you provide as well, where can they find you online and maybe your telephone?
I have a 800 number, 800-767-2922. And as far as an online presence, we have a website that is www.csc-world.com.
Well, Chris, thanks for joining us here today, and there's nothing like fattening up those calves to make sure we have a nice steak at the end of the day. Kevin, back to you.
Thanks, Lane. Still to come on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll introduce you to an operation in New York that's leaving the land in better shape for future generations. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
At Case IH, we believe it's our job to provide you with solutions. That's why our Farmall and Maxim tractors, as well as our tools and attachments, are designed with you in mind. From mowing to baling to loading and more, we're here to help turn your to-dos into to-dones. At Case IH, we'll keep your days running smoothly with equipment that's durable, versatile, and highly efficient. No wonder farmers are more loyal to Case IH than any other brand. Visit your local dealer or go to caseih.com/livestock for more.
What does it mean to be dependable? It means you do what you say you'll do time and time again. Because performance isn't optional, and your task is essential. For over 95 years, we have proven ourselves to be the most dependable choice. That's why the cattlemen of this great nation trust Ritchie to provide fresh water on demand. Ritchie, proud to be a partner to the American cattlemen since 1921.
Welcome back. The 2018 Regional Environmental Stewardship Award winners were announced during the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting in Denver. These 6 operations showcase the efforts of cattlemen and women who are working hard to leave the land better than they found it. This week, we begin with a look at each of the regional winners, starting with a Region 1 winner from New York.
In the southern foothills of the Catskill Mountains, Thunder View Farms began in 1958 when Phil Coombe added 6 head of registered Aberdeen Angus cattle to the family farm on South Hill. Younger brother Dick joined the operation soon after.
We started out with 5 brood cows, one that was no good, 5 calves, and they were 5 bred back, and we're up now to 250 some, 236, somewhere in there. We just passed 100 calves this year, first time ever.
Why we stuck with it, I'll never know, especially in this particular area. But the bottom line was we liked raising cattle and we absolutely loved living here.
Gradually, we've accumulated almost 2,000 acres as a family. And that land is here, and it's not great tillable land, so cattle fits well with what we did.
Thunder View Farms is just 100 miles north of New York City and sits between two of the state's biggest reservoirs that supply drinking water to 9 million people. In the 1990s, New York City proposed tough watershed regulations that would have driven most farms out of business. The Coombe family joined with others in the area to convince New York officials that the best way to protect the watershed was to keep the land in well-managed forests and farms. Thunder View was one of the first to adopt best management practices to control runoff on their property.
Coombs have done an excellent job of working with the New York City watershed to keep the water clean and be excellent stewards of the environment. Dick Coombe was one of the founding members of the Watershed Ag Council and was a major player in getting this off the ground.
They've been involved since the beginning, and they've been excellent stewards of the land and worked very closely with the water supply to protect the supply and also to produce a really high quality beef.
I think it's been a huge advantage for the beef industry that we fought the battle and won with the city, and we have a strong partnership with the city. I stand here in the heart of the watershed, and we've taken a negative that should have been put us out of business and turned it into a positive. I'm pretty darn proud of the fact that there's over 200 farms in the watershed, with New York City paying best management practices on those farms to keep the water clean and enabling us to stay in agriculture.
As part of this effort, the Coombe family installed a gravity flow system that delivers fresh, clean water to all of their pastures, allowing them to fence their cattle out of the streams on the farm. They also implemented an intensive grazing system with livestock rotated every 4 to 5 days.
We've realized that if you can put grass, cattle in grass that's anywhere from 8 to 12 inches tall and get them out before when it's around 4 inches tall, it will return to 8 to 12 inches much quicker than if you let it get eaten all the way down to the ground. And that provides a higher nutritional value. It's driven our weaning weights. Our weaning average has gone up by over 100 pounds in the last 3 or 4 years as we've instituted higher genetic quality as well, but also rotational grazing.
Concentrated feeding during winter is another challenge, and the Coombe family developed a novel approach to avoid nutrient and sediment runoff. They installed heavy-use feeding pads, and they use silage bags to feed. This provides a healthier environment for the animals while reducing the workload on the family.
We can get up to 3 or 4 feet of snow, which makes it a lot harder for the cows to be out in pasture. So what we do, we bring them all into ag bag lane. It's kind of a lane system with ag bags on it. Ag bags are 8 foot wide, 200 feet long, packed full of silage that allows it to ferment in there. And what we do is we just set a wire up on each end and we work our way into the center of it. And we actually have very little waste, because if you run that fence hot enough, that's the high tensile fence you're scooting along as a bag, you can make them eat all the way down to the plastic. Then you'll just move it forward the next day, you rake it down a little bit with a potato hook for them, and it works out really well, and our performance is high.
To supplement their electrical needs, the Coombe family built a wind turbine and installed solar panels. These systems provide all the electricity required to operate the farm shop and their freezer beef business. Selling their beef directly to consumers offers Thunder View a valuable opportunity to share its conservation story with the public.
People that buy our meat down in Staten Island or in New York City, they really like to come up. They want to bring their kids to the farm. They want to see the cattle. You have them pet a calf, you know, they appreciate it. They appreciate seeing the cattle on green grass, and those types of things make a customer for a very long time.
From the beginning, creating a sustainable family farm was the goal of the Coombe brothers. Over the years, they've seen Thunder View Farms grow far beyond their expectations.
It's been a dream that I've had since I was a little kid, and it's almost fulfilled. I mean, the cattle part of the thing, the progress that's been made is just, it's astronomical.
I think it's a pretty nice piece of property, and I think it's set up for a viable business, beef business, and it has unlimited opportunities. So I don't know which way it's going to go, but I have a feeling it's going to be some really good things.
One day in a lot of years when I have kids, I definitely want to make sure that they know that this land has always been protected that way with the easements and everything, that it will stay that way, because that's the best way to keep the land.
I'm clearly proud of the cattle, but I'm really proud of what we've done to protect our farm. Protect it from development. It's amazing because your blood, sweat, and tears are in all this and to know that it's preserved is just heartwarming.
Now, if you'd like to find out more about the Environmental Stewardship Award winners, see photos and videos, or even learn how to nominate someone for this award, visit the website environmentalstewardship.org. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll show you how New Holland is utilizing cutting-edge research to help producers put up higher quality hay. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Say goodbye to your toughest pasture and rangeland weeds for good. Because one product offers season-long control, handles the widest spectrum of broadleaf weeds, and clears the way for increased forage with greater grazing flexibility. So you get more beef per acre at a cost that can't be beat. It's Grazon Next HL herbicide, and if it's in your pastures, plain and simple, weeds won't be.
Join the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. NCBA is the oldest cattle industry organization, working every day to defend your interests in Washington, D.C. And there are big benefits to being a member. You'll get news you can use in the National Cattlemen and policy updates from Beltway Beef, plus big discounts from John Deere, Cabela's, and more great partners. Join now. Call 866-233-3872 or sign up online at ncba.org.
Welcome back. On cattle operations across the U.S., making and storing hay and forage is a common activity. So common, in fact, that we sometimes forget how much science goes into putting up a high-quality feed resource for our cattle. Brian Baxter takes us to Pennsylvania for more about New Holland's research into the key factors that influence the quality and value from hay and forage.
When it comes to cutting and storing hay, little things mean a lot. The timing of cutting, the dry down, and the density of your bales. They can all make a big difference in the performance of your cattle. One trend is more producers are putting up their forage as baleage or silage.
One of the benefits of producing silage is that it's at a higher moisture versus your dry hay and your dry forage that you're producing. So with that, we're going to see less leaf loss, and you're going to see overall less loss with respiration. So both of those things actually leads to overall better forage quality or overall higher nutritive value of those forages, which in turn is going to give you better feed to feed your livestock. Whenever you're deciding on where baleage will fit into your particular operation, it's always important to think about the class of livestock that you're feeding and where they are within the production cycle. For example, younger growing cattle are going to have higher nutrient requirements, and this baleage overall is going to give you a higher nutrient value for feeding these livestock.
Protein, as we all know, when you talk to your nutritionist, whether you're producing beef or you're producing milk, it's the most expensive ingredient. And so baleage or silage is a golden opportunity to harvest more of your leaves. And in the case of alfalfa, for instance, 71% of the nutritional value is found where? It's found in the leaf. So if I can harvest more leaves, and baleage gives me that opportunity, I can harvest a higher value of protein, or a higher percentage of protein. If I can keep the bale temperature too hot when I wrap it, I can also save and conserve some more protein. So trying to get all that oxygen out is really the name of the game, and bale density is ultimately where you want to be. The denser, the better.
In fact, New Holland is working with Penn State University to do comprehensive research that will better define the impact of bale density and the factors that influence it.
How do you set your baler to make the perfect bale? There are many different ways to do that. The main thing you want to focus on is getting it the highest density possible. And it requires, it's going to be harder on the equipment unless the equipment's designed for that. But you want to get a dense bale. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be more of a challenge to move, but it's still going to give you that less oxygen and ferment properly. So the things producers need to think about is getting rid of the oxygen, the proper moisture, and getting it sealed as quick as possible after you've chopped it or baled it.
It's the goal to get the oxygen out of the bale as quick as you can, but okay, should I make that bale at 10 pounds per cubic foot? Is that good enough? Or is it 15? What's the goal? Is it 20? Where should we be? So we're seeking some answers. We'd like to see specifics on recommendations of bale density as well as moistures, because that's another big debate that rages on.
I don't think we've teased out yet exactly what the ground speed, but it goes right back to those basic principles. You want to make a dense bale. And if you're going at 10 miles an hour and not making a dense bale, that's too fast. While on the other hand, going at 4 miles an hour, it's going to take you a lot longer to get the baling done. So you're trying to make a compromise, but make it as dense as you can make it.
Bale density is even more important in putting up silage or baleage because less room for oxygen should lead to higher fermentation and less spoilage. And a higher amount of feed value per bale can save a producer a trip or two when they're hauling hay to their cattle.
So what research has shown in the past is that with any fermented forage or any ensiled forage, typically the denser you can pack that forage, the better fermentation you're going to have. So in short, the quicker you can get the oxygen eliminated from that forage, whether you're packing it in a bunk or in a bag, or if you're baling it like we're doing in this particular study, typically the more dense you can get that, the better fermentation you're going to have, which overall is going to give you a better quality product to feed your animals.
If you see a bale with a nice round radius and a square edge, that's the ideal silage bale. And the reason it's ideal is those little divots on the edges. Whenever you unroll those bales, especially the longer you want to keep them in storage, if there's going to be white sugar mold or white mold anywhere, it's going to be on those edges of the bale where those pockets are at, because that forage wasn't as dense on those edges and there was more oxygen there.
The research project at Penn State is not yet complete. The team is continuing to look at a variety of factors that impact forage quality and the ability to avoid spoilage. This includes the width of windrows, the speed of baling, and even the different types of round baler design.
And the concept is does the chamber design affect the density of the bale? The other thing is does ground speed affect the density of the bale? So as you pull the baler faster, it's generally thought that reduces density. It's probably true, but just how fast does it reduce density? Can I, as a producer, pull that baler at 10 miles an hour to maximize tons per hour and take a small hit in density? I bet you there's balers that can do that, and I bet there's balers that can't. So we seek to find that answer as well.
Finding answers and giving producers the tools to make better decisions and better quality feed for their cattle is the goal of the research. In Pennsylvania, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
As the research continues, we'll have updates on the importance of bale density and other factors that impact the feed value of the hay and forage you provide for your cattle. And for more information on hay tools and equipment from New Holland, visit the website newholland.com. And don't forget, New Holland is also adding more value to your NCBA membership by offering special discounts on tractors, hay tools, skid steer loaders, and more. They're just one of many companies offering exclusive deals. Become a member today by calling 1-866-233-3872 or visiting the website ncba.org. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, find out about a program at the University of Nebraska that's giving students the tools they need to start their own ag-related businesses. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
There is a new world out there, revealing itself in unpredictable ways. A world that demands more from the land and those who grow, farm, and build on it. This new world calls for the ingenuity to get more out of it, while preserving as much as we can. After all, to stay ahead of tomorrow, we need to be equipped for it today.
Do you know all you need to about working cattle? Did you know there are proven methods that can reduce stress for the animals, for you and your crew? Now there's an easy way for you to learn from the experts who can help sharpen your stockmanship and stewardship skills. In interactive sessions, you'll learn better ways to work cattle more efficiently, skills that can help put more money in your pocket. Find out more and locate an upcoming event near you at the website stockmanshipandstewardship.org.
We all know deciding what to do after graduation is one of the toughest choices a person has to make. But what if you had a job waiting for you, and it was for a company you created? Cattleman to Cattleman reporter Russell Nemitz has more on a college program designed to help students gain valuable experience starting and running their own ag-related businesses.
Inside Miller Hall on the University of Nebraska campus, a group of students is meeting to discuss the pros and cons of a new business idea. They're all part of the Angler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program, which helps undergrads develop the skills they need to start their own businesses.
The Angler program is really the vision and dream of a guy well known in the cattle business, Paul Angler, who is a native Nebraskan. He built this extraordinary company called Cactus Feeders. And as Paul reached his zenith years, he wanted to make an investment in the future. And he thought the best way to do that was to create a program that would, in fact, empower successive generations of people to buy into the notion of free enterprise, that, in fact, people can build companies, that they can be the captain of their own ship. So the mission of the Angler program is very simple. Our mission is to embolden our people to courageously pursue their purpose through the art and science of entrepreneurship. Those free spirits and do-it-myselfers and I'd rather work 80 for myself than 40 for somebody else kind of folks. And the good news is in Nebraska you find them in some quantity.
At one time, Dr. Tom Field was the Director of Producer Education at NCBA. Now he's in charge of the Angler program. He knows this isn't your traditional college course. Gone are the old classroom staples like textbooks, lectures, and quizzes.
We're actually a band of pirates trying to disrupt higher education. We believe that in light of the technology, the tools, the knowledge that this generation has at their very fingertips, the old school way of sitting in rows and rote memorization, those days are gone, and so we've left them behind.
It's a really unique program because you're able to get the hands-on experience, actually start the building of the business, and have some great mentors here along the way to help you in that process.
And then as I progressed and I actually started my own company and things kind of started taking off, they really allowed me to basically take credit for running my business.
You look at education a little bit differently. You actually research things not because you're trying to get a grade, but because it's important to the viability and the success of your business that you're starting. You know, and I see Angler really being the leader of not just business education being taught this way, but all education down the road.
Dozens of students are taking advantage of the Angler program. Before joining, many were running companies in their spare time between classes. Now they have a place to go where they can focus on their business while getting college credit. Plus, they get a chance to interact with like-minded individuals who often work together to develop business ideas.
That's one of the great aspects of the Angler program, is that so many motivated 20, 21-year-olds come together and really develop a group together and push each other, but also when one person succeeds, it's definitely something to look up to and something to motivate yourself to do.
These Nebraska students know a brilliant idea could lead to a lucrative business. The goal of the Angler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program is to give them the skills and resources they need to make it happen.
Thinking about what I want to do after college, even still as a junior, it's definitely scary and I really don't know. But with this entrepreneurship venture that I'm on and the ways that the Angler program has empowered me, it's really cool to see I might be able to be an entrepreneur directly out of college.
Hopefully I can grow my business enough to have a career ready for me after graduation, but if that doesn't happen and I need to work for another employer for a while, then I'll still have these innovative thinking skills and really be able to be a self-starter, which employers enjoy.
The status quo of coming to the university is you go to the university to get a degree and then get a job right after. And so that's really what the Engler program helped me with, was realize that you don't have to follow the status quo of just getting a job after school. You can actually start your own business in college, which I did, and they've really helped me propel that forward.
We're creating a generation of people, and certainly out of our program, young people who know that they can take the helm, that it's okay to imagine big, to aspire, to pour their heart and soul into something and to make a difference. We're deeply committed to changing the trajectory for rural America, and we think it starts here, and we think we found the right people to make that come true.
Reporting from the University of Nebraska campus, I'm Russell Nemitz for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
To find out more about the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program, or to check out some of the different companies started by students, visit their University of Nebraska webpage at engler.unl.edu. Still ahead, it's time for a visit with our good friend Baxter Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
No matter what job I've got to do, my John Deere 5E tractor can do it all. Whether I'm cutting, moving feed, or building a fence. Using my 5E means my work gets done faster at a price I can afford, and that works for me.
Did you know that Prefert makes over 1,000 different farm, ranch, and rodeo items? And now, thanks to Prefert Direct, it's easier than ever before to get access to every item Prefert makes delivered direct to your local dealer. For more information about Prefert Direct, visit us at prefert.com. Prefert, America's #1 name in farm, ranch, and rodeo.
When a new calf hits the ground, his clock starts ticking. A belly full of colostrum gives him his best odds, but if he doesn't get any, his time starts running out. That's when you grab a bag of Oxford Ag Colostrum in their patented feeding system. Fill them with warm water, shake it to mix, feed it with a tube or nipple, and you are done. No bucket, no bottle, no mess, and right on time. Get yours at oxfordag.com. Costs less than a dead calf.
Big High and Lonesome's a place in my mind, like out from Lakeview to Burns, or up on the Judith, or at Promontory, about where the UP track turns. It's anywhere you feel tiny when you get a good look at the sky, and sometimes when it's a storming, you can look the Lord in the eye. I stood and watched in amazement out on San Augustine Plain while the sky turned as black as the curtains in hell, and the wind come a-chasing the rain. And standing there watching, I felt it in the minutes before it arrived. An unearthly stillness prickled my skin like the storm itself was alive. And when it hit with a fury. The wind with its saber unsheathed led the charge with the scream of a demon. The storm was baring its teeth, and the thunder cracked and the sky split apart with a horrible, deafening roar. And I felt like a fox in a cage made of bones, in sight of the hounds at the door. And the blackness shook like a she-bear, and the lightning blinded the sun, and the rain fell like bullets around me, scattering dust like a gun, and it was over as quick as it started, leaving it peaceful instead, and the only sound was the beat of my heart pounding inside of my head. I took off my hat, too shaken to move, afraid of making a sound. I felt like a man on the head of a pin with nobody else around. But the sun was already sparkling, and raindrops still wet on my face. And the big high and lonesome is only God's way of putting a man in his place. This is Baxter Black from out there.
Thanks, Baxter. That's a powerful reminder of our real place in the universe. Want to rewatch an episode of Cattlemen to Cattlemen or catch up on anything you've missed? Then visit our YouTube page. You'll find all of our shows filled with educational segments and producer profiles from all across the country. It's also another chance to see Baxter Black. So check us out on YouTube. We're back right after this.
If you're looking for outstanding genetics that will work for you, then make plans now to be at the 2018 CK Cattle Headquarters Sale on October 26th in Hope Hall, Alabama. CK Cattle is a 3-generation operation offering the best in Angus, Key Angus, and Sim Angus bulls and females, backed by a family that cares about their customers.
The customer is the most important thing in our operation. You know, the CK guarantee is pretty simple. I mean, we live by the golden rule. We want to treat you like you want to be treated. If you have a problem with your bull, we're going to back them.
Don't miss their 2018 sale offering more than 100 solid 2-year-old bulls and 100 females, including 30 tiger-striped F1 Brayford heifers. It all happens Friday, October 26th. Learn more at the website ckkattle.com.
Welcome back. As a viewer of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we want to hear from you. If you have questions or comments or even a story idea for us, drop us an email and we may use them on a future show. Send us your thoughts at our email address, that's c2c@beef.org. And you can always reach us and NCBA through the website ncba.org. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week, right here on RFD TV.